Hello everyone and welcome to E2 School. You're here today to do level 2 with me. My name is Kay. I'm one of the expert teachers here at E2 School. So what are we going to be doing today in today's lesson? Well, we're looking at the topic of education and we're looking at lesson number 2, doing the course. And the grammar today we're going to look at is adverbs. Don't worry if you don't know much about it, that's okay. We'll go through this in a bit more detail when we get to that. So the first thing I want to know from you guys is a little bit about my technology. So let's start there. So my first question for you all is, can you hear me? So in your chat box, which is at the bottom of the screen, can you type yes if you can hear me and no if you can't hear me? Excellent. Thank you, everyone. You're using the chat box really well. So my next question is, can you also see my screen? Right, excellent. This is a great start. So my technology is working and you guys are using the chat box really well, but let's have a look at that in a little bit more detail. So the first question is, what should I use the chat box for? Well, every time I ask you a question, you answer using the chat box. So if I ask you a question, it doesn't matter if you're not sure, you are allowed to guess, that's fine. And right or wrong answers are both good because it means I can see what you're thinking and see who's doing the lesson with me and who is following, understanding, and everything like that. If you have a question as well, you can also type it in the chat box. So if you're not sure about something like grammar or vocabulary that we're looking at right now, please type your question in the chat box. Now, I might not be able to answer the question right at that moment because I will need to finish the activity we're doing and then look at the questions, but I will get to the question and I will definitely be able to answer it at the end. If it's not connected to today's lesson, I'll leave it to the end of the lesson. Now, the other thing that we've got is at the bottom, you'll find there's a little arrow which gives you a choice about who can see what you write. Now, if you choose all panelists, this just means me, the teacher. That's all it is. It's a private message to me. But if you choose the second one, all panelists and attendees, that means me and the other students. So please choose this one for most things because that way it will make it more like a real class. It means that the other students will see your questions as well as your answers. So when I talk about your answers, we can all see what we're looking at. So if you've only sent it to me, I will ask you to change it and send it to everyone because if it's only sent to me, I won't be doing a group discussion about your grammar or your sentence. So make sure you choose all panelists and attendees. If you're not sure about something and you do want to ask me a private question, that is also okay. Please just choose all panelists then. So that should be the basics. Now, if you're joining me on YouTube, you won't have this chat box. You will need to use the YouTube live chat feature. And I do see your questions and your answers in there. So hello, everyone, and welcome there. Okay, now for everyone who is joining me today in the class, I'll share a link with you to the Facebook page. We've started a group for the E2 School Level 2 students so that you guys can meet and connect and maybe make some other connections with another student you can chat with or practice speaking or writing English with. So I'll share that link at the end. So for everyone on YouTube, I just want to remind you how you get to join us fully, and that is in here, e2school.com. And when you do, you've got all the different levels, and today we're looking at level 2. So that's the one you need to join. So that's our intermediate level. If you are doing today's lesson, I'm also going to recommend 2 more courses, and these are the top 2 courses. So for everyone, I think if you want to work on your pronunciation, it will also help you with your listening, then Speaking Lab is the one for you. It is not free. You do get to do a few lessons for free, but you will need to upgrade to be able to access that properly. But the other one is free, and this is the Grammar Review. Now, the Grammar Review is covering all the basics of grammar. And today's grammar, we are looking at adverbs, and that is definitely a topic in the grammar review. Now, we're going to look at a specific group and specific uses of adverbs, but if you want to go and do a review of more general of all of the categories, please make sure you go and look at the grammar review later and try those lessons. Okay, so the other question I sometimes get asked is about the big tests like IELTS or PTE or something like that. So if you want some help about that category, I need you to go across to our sister school, which is e2language.com, and they'll be able to help you there. They're much better experts at that topic. So that brings us to today's topic. What are we learning? So we are up to the topic of education, and we're up to lesson 2. This is the topic of doing the course. Now, if you have the skills course, you need to choose the writing skill and the speaking skill. That's what we're looking at today. I would still recommend making sure you do the vocabulary, because that is doing the course of vocabulary is still connected with this. And today's grammar you'll find in the grammar zone. So let's start the lesson. Okay, what have we got? We have an interesting picture which looks like somebody doing the course. So I want to know what you guys know, what vocabulary you already have. So in your chat box, I want you to type the word or the names that you know for the man here at the front of the class. I don't think he's a student. So what do we call him? What is his job? So in the chat box, put that. Oh, excellent work. So I can see lots of people saying the word professor or lecturer. So make sure you have the R. If you only say lecture with no R on the end, then that is the thing, but lecturer is the person. So a lecture is what the lecturer gives. So this is the name of the class that you go to, a lecture. If you add the R on the end, that makes it the person. So exactly like Janet says, like the speaker. So yes, Janet, I agree. This could be a speaker, but because it's a school situation, I think I would upgrade speaker and make it a bit more specific. So I think the best two are definitely lecturer and professor. Excellent work, everyone. Now, I just want to answer one of the questions on YouTube. Kavya is asking about live classes about active and passive voice. We don't actually have any on that as a specific category in this level. But if you're wanting to learn more about what you can do for the live classes, what I recommend is go and have a look at the level. Level 1 has got a little bit of passive voice. Level 2, we have a lesson on passive voice, so you can go and do that, but there isn't any in the grammar review. Level 3 and level 4, they might talk a little bit about passive voice, but it's not as a full grammar lesson like we do at this level. It's more about using it with the skills. So again, go and have a look at the summary of each of those levels, and you'll see where you'll find that as a specific idea. Okay, I'm just looking at the other question. Mira, I'm going to come back to your question at the end because yours is not actually connected to what we're looking at right now. Okay, so what we are looking at right now is doing the course, and that's the topic. We're looking at speaking and writing as our focus. So what I want to know is, what can you do? So today we're going to look at reading and listening to some of these stories, focusing on requests and extensions. This is the main function you need when you're doing a course. And to do that, we're going to focus on adverbs as the grammar. The other thing we're going to look at is the phrasal verbs. So before we continue, this is something you'll find in the vocabulary section, and I would recommend doing the whole lesson, but I just want to make sure everyone knows these words before we continue. So I want you to type one of these phrasal verbs in the chat box. So which one of these phrasal verbs means to return to a place that you left? So to return to a place that you left. Ah, nice work. So most people are saying go back. Now, Mujna has asked come back. Good question. So that one's not actually one of my words in the list, but I do think go back and come back are used in a very similar way. The big difference here is the same difference as when you use the word go or when you use the word come. The difference by adding the word back is it means return, to go to somewhere and return. So if you're talking about go back, then that means you are at the halfway mark. You have already left and now you need to turn around and return to where you came from. But we are both now, when we're talking, not at the finish point. We are not at that place. If you say come back, then maybe you are on the phone and I'm saying, oh, no, come back here. So I'm saying come here, come to where I am. I am at the finish point. So the difference between go and come is about the direction. When I say go, it means leave from here, go. So go like away from the place. When you're saying come, I'm saying here, come to me. So this is the big difference when we're looking at those two verbs. And I think this is still true when we're using it as a phrasal verb. So if you're not sure about those, I would definitely practice because it will make it a little bit confusing for your listener or reader otherwise. So I hope that helps. So we are definitely looking at go back. And so the formal word would be return. Okay, let's do one more. Which one of those phrasal verbs means when you have an assignment or an essay, you have to write it and submit it. And you can either submit it with a button on the computer and do it online, or you can print it and have it as paper and give the paper to your teacher. What is the phrasal verb for when you are giving this to your teacher? Excellent work. Everyone has gone for turn in. And so that is that official submission of handing in or submitting an essay, an assignment, or some sort of assessment. It's not usually used for a test though, because a test you will do at that moment. So good work, everyone. So if you're not sure about these words, please make sure you go and look in the vocabulary section, and you need to look for education and lesson 2, doing the course. So let's continue and see what's next in our lesson today. Right, we're going to start with stories. Now, this story is something you might find in a type of writing test. So let's look at the topic and what the task is asking us to do. So it says, your English teacher has asked you to write a story. Your story must begin with this sentence. When Ravi arrived at the library, he couldn't find ... So you need to write a story of about 100 words. So when we're looking at a story, there's a few things we need to be careful about. And so let me just focus on this and make it, oops, sorry, come back. Let me make this a bit bigger. Button. All right, that should do it. So I don't want to focus on our example yet because I don't want to look at our story. So don't worry about the story that you see at the bottom there. I don't want you to write my story. I want to check that you know how to write a story. So let's start with that. So what I'm looking at is what is in a normal story. What are some of the questions you would answer in a story? So in your chat box, can you tell me some questions you need to answer in a story? I'll give you a clue. They all start with WH. Nice ideas, Muzna. So what, why, how? Great start. Okay, Gajavali, I'm going to come back and look at your vocabulary. It's not what we're looking at for the moment, so I'll come back to that one. Oh, Hannes, good word. Where. We definitely need to know where a story is. So we need to know what happened, why it happened, how it happened, where it happened. Oh, I like that. I agree, Janet. When did it happen? And so maybe also one more, who? Who is in my story? So in this question, do you know who? Can you tell me who is my story about? Ravi, nice and easy. Well, maybe. Is Ravi male or female? Yes. Now, if you're not sure if Ravi is male or female, you can guess, but we have a clue in this sentence. There is a pronoun. He couldn't find. So you do have to use Ravi as a male for this story. Now, that's the only thing you have to use. You have to use Ravi, but you can add a second character if you want. You can add more than one character, your choice. Or the story could be just about Ravi. Okay, what about when? When did this happen? Can anyone tell me when? When did Ravi do this? So there is a clue in that sentence as well. What does this tell me? Arrived, couldn't. That's it, Darren. All I know is it's past. I don't know exactly when in the past. That's your choice. But I know it has to be a past. And this is the thing about stories. Most stories are told in past tense. You will probably find you use a lot of past simple, maybe even a little bit of past continuous, and possibly past perfect, but probably not much. So, most of your story, look at your verbs, it's going to be past. The only other thing you'll find in your story is if you finish your story, your last paragraph, so you're reminding the reader of the introduction, but you're telling me about what happens now. So you're bringing me to the future. So you could finish the story talking about now or possibly future. So you might have one paragraph at the end that has either present or future tense. But usually, most of your story should be past tense. So that's clue number one. Okay, my next thing that I can see in my sentence, what about where? Where is the story set? Where is Ravi? Yes, he is at a library. Now, where do you find libraries? Because we can go more specific. You can tell me more information. What library could this be? Aha, it could be at a school or a college or a university. Can you find libraries in other places? Yes, Munmun and Isra, that's it. You can also have a public library, and that would mean it's the library for the city or maybe you're part of the city. So that all of those could be true, and it's up to you to choose which place you are making as a setting for this story. Musna has asked me at the library or at a library. Now, that one depends on if you're going for a specific location or a library in general. So if I say at a library, it means one library from the group of libraries. It doesn't matter which library. If I said the library, it means a specific library. Now, if I say the library and don't tell you any more information about it, then that means I think you, the reader, already know this location. You already know it. You don't need me to be more specific. But if that's not true, you should give me more information. Oh, Kavya, nice extra idea. We could also have a government library. I've also seen some more specific things like law libraries or libraries all about finance. So you can have even a specific topic for your library as well. Oh, yes, the National Library, like Isra said. So there are lots of different options here. You can go as specific as you want. However, your first sentence you can't change. You must have it as at the library. So the idea is your next sentence needs to give me more information about that location if you think it's needed. So for this one, at the library, I think the next piece of information will tell me why he's at a library, which means this will tell me a bit about what kind of library it is. So the next thing we need to know is what happened. And so it says he arrived at the library and couldn't find something. So you get to finish that sentence. So I'm going to give you guys a minute and I want you to finish this sentence. So when Ravi arrived at the library, he couldn't find what. And now this is where you can be creative. You can go for something traditional you might find in a library, but you could go for a person or all kinds of other things. So you choose, how would you finish that sentence? I'm going to turn off my camera for a minute and let you type, and then we'll come back and look at these sentences. Okay, so let's have a look at these. You guys have got some really nice sentences. Congratulations. In general, most of them are really good and most of them have pretty good grammar. There's a couple of small things that we need to adjust. So let's look at these these ones together. So when you look at all of these, are there any things that you see that we're missing for grammar? Tell me what you would fix, what number and what grammar thing you need to add or fix. It's normally something you need to add in most of these. Ah, Suta, yes, it's such an easy thing. It looks like it's a typing mistake. I agree. It's a his book is required. So I think I'm with you there. I think we have a typing mistake, not a spelling mistake here. I don't think it's meant to be his. So I don't think it's meant to be is. I think it's meant to be his. So his. So yes, I agree. His required book. So he couldn't find his required book. Then that one is perfect. So we are now good to go for that one. What about number 2? Is that one okay? His is there already? I think number 2 is already a great sentence. He couldn't find his identification card or ID card. Now, which one is better? To use the full expanded identification card or ID, which is the short form of identification? So what do you use in a story? Do we use formal or informal, or can we use a mixture? Ah, no, it's a story. Stories, you're allowed to be creative. You don't have to be formal, which means you don't have to use the full word. I would use the full word if you think most people won't know what it means. So here's my question. Is ID a really common acronym? Is those 2 letters, ID, something that most people understand? If you think most people understand it, then sure, no problem. But if you think it's a strange one, or maybe it's new or it's unusual, it might be better to write the full word. But really, other than that, that's the only real choice we need to make for this one. I would be happy with both of those. We can either use identification or ID for a story, they both work. Now, if you wanted to show a little bit of variety, you're probably going to talk about ID card many times in your story. So I would use both of these within the story, and I'd probably do the first one saying, when Ravi arrived at the library, he couldn't find his identification card, blah, 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 blah. And then he found his ID card in, and that would be the simpler one for the second time. So no problem. What about number 3? He couldn't find, is this one good or do we need to fix it? Nice. So this one is interesting. It is fine like it is, but Muhammad has also added the word which, and this is the optional one. So this is one of the ones that you can omit, but it is fine as it is. The book he wanted is fine, or we could say the book which he wanted. So adding that which, that is this which here, would be okay. It's an optional extra, and it just is showing me your relative clauses, but this one is an optional relative clause. So because of that, it is not required. You don't have to. So if we did, we'd add it here and we would say this which. So if you wanted the book which he wanted, your choice, both are good. Okay, number 4. What do you think of number 4? Oh, and sorry, can I just go back to number 3? I've just seen someone else's comment. We can't use the word what. It has to be the word which. The book What He Wanted is incorrect grammar. What is not a relative clause and a relative pronoun, you cannot use what. So please, please, please take that one away from your vocabulary. What is a question word, not a relative pronoun, so you can't use it in that category. So just making sure you're okay with that. Okay, so number 4, looking at number 4. This one is almost perfect. The only thing I'm missing is punctuation. Yes, Jenny, we need a comma. So after the word book, am I on red? We need a comma. So the reference book, comma, Encyclopedia of the Animal Kingdom, comma, he required for his upcoming assignment, because these 2 commas tell me that this is extra information that I can remove. So the information between the 2 commas can be taken away. So if I want to test it, I would say he couldn't find the reference book he required for his upcoming assignment. No problem. This is perfect. But again, like number 3, I could also add the word which. He couldn't find the reference book which he required for his upcoming assignment. So we could also add here, we could also add a which, and that is again the optional one. It doesn't have to be here. So this is your choice. So both like number 3 and number 4, both of those whiches are optional. Cool. Okay, but I really like, oh, I've made a typing mistake. With this one, when you're doing the book name, you should use either single and single or double and double. Make sure it's consistent. That's my typing mistake, but it really doesn't make a huge difference. The only thing I have seen for most people's choices is normally when it's 2 and 2, this is for speech. So this is a quotation of the what the person is saying. So when you do it as 1 and 1, it's more likely to be a title like this, a book title, a movie title, or something like that. So for this one, I would probably lean towards just doing a single and a single as the more preferred etiquette, but realistically, this one's a little bit flexible. Okay, so looking at this, I love this one, number 4, because this person has given me not just that we're looking for a book, but what is the book's name? And looking at this title, I have a lot of ideas about what this assignment will be. It's something about animals, I guess. So it's already really nice for me, the reader. I have a lot of a really good picture in my head for understanding what this story will be about. So that's a nice technique for number 4. So number 4 is now great because all we needed to add was those commas. Okay, what about number 5? Yes, good work, everyone. We are missing the, because you must have here, there, we must have the word the. Why do we need the? Why can I not just say librarian? Yes, Saritha, you got it. It is a specific person. And you don't need to say a librarian, which would mean one in general in the group of librarian. We're talking about specific because this is the rule. So normally I would argue with the rule is if it's a specific person, a unique person, or an obvious person. So obvious for me is when I, the writer or the speaker, and my reader or listener also know the same knowledge. So if I go into a library, I want to talk to a librarian. If the library is a small library, there's only going to be one librarian. In this case, it's not important who the librarian is, but that I need to talk to the librarian. So this is why I would go for specific, and because I think it's an obvious person, I would just go straight to specific the first time rather than saying a librarian. So when Ravi arrived at the library, he couldn't find the librarian. Perfect, no problem. If we used when Ravi arrived at the library, he couldn't find a librarian, then this means it's one from the group of librarians, and this library is probably a little bit bigger, so there's more choices. So both of those would be an option, so I'll add that in. You could also write, hold on, whoops, come back, And we could also write the word ah. So the or ah for this one would be fine. It changes the meaning of the sentence depending on which one you are choosing. That's all. Okay, so librarian is a great option. And so that now is a correct sentence. Excellent work. What about number 6? Musna, when you're saying commas, are you meaning the speech commas or the adding a comma before and after? So written by Darwin, comma before, written, comma after Darwin. Yes, yes. Okay, so like your example. Yes, I agree. Now, this one's an interesting one because technically you've got a little bit of flexibility, but a lot like number 4, we can add the extra comma and it will make it clearer. So he couldn't find the reference book on human evolution written by Darwin, comma. So you've got one of the commas, but we probably need that first one as well, because this is the other place that I would also write which. So there you could also write the word which. And again, it's an optional placement. So the reference book on human evolution, which was written by Darwin, which he wanted to finish his project. But I don't think I would do this one because we have the second which. So for me, this actually makes it really complicated to do it twice. So I would take that one out and just leave it as the comma, and that simplifies that whole sentence. So one which is enough. 2 of them makes it a bit too complicated. But yes, and so this is the same idea as number 4, but in this one, we've not given you the title of the book, we've given you the author of the book. So I don't know if everyone knows who Darwin is, but because it's a capital D, I know it's a person, so it's an author. So definitely we need that. So that would be in this one, we've just switched that information around. And this is also possible that you can change the order. And Munmun, yes, you're right. Darwin, the father of evolution theory. Yes, exactly. So this tells me that number 6 and number 4, these 2 students were very, you have very similar ideas. You were thinking about the same idea, animals and evolution or something like that. But this is where, again, now this sentence is perfect. And all we're looking at is just adding one little comma. Okay, number 7, what do you think about this? I agree, Musna. It's already pretty good. And this is where it is a different category of topic. So I love how everyone's got different sentences here where we've got all kinds of different things happening in this story just based on how you have finished this first sentence. So it could be that he couldn't find a book, and we've got ways of going for just general or more specific information about the book. It could be that he's looking for an identification card. It could be he's looking for a person like a librarian, or it could be he's looking for a group of people. And I would think number 7, group mates, we're probably thinking school or something like that. So again, I would think that means that story will tell me a bit more information in the next sentence about where we are. Now, my other suggestion is at this point, you must give me a full stop. This is already a really amazing sentence. We've already got 2 or 3 ideas in this sentence, depending on how you've finished it. And this is enough for the reader to understand. If you give me more ideas, the reader's going to get a bit confused. So always make sure your sentences have full stops and a new sentence. I would argue 2 or 3 ideas in a sentence is fine, but when you start to add 4 or 5 ideas, the reader will probably forget. So, for example, idea 1, we have when Ravi arrived at the library. So that's idea 1. He couldn't find 2. So he couldn't find his book. There's 2 ideas. He couldn't find the book, the name of the book, and the upcoming assignment. So that's actually getting on to 4 ideas. But because book and the name are connected, as a reader, I can still understand this idea. So this is where the same happens for number 6. Ravi going to the library, he couldn't find a book on evolution by Darwin, so we're connecting it. But we've got the third idea, which is about finishing his project. So if we're stopping here, it means me, the reader, can understand, and your next sentence adds more information. So good work, everyone, on what you have there. I'm going to change our screen back to our lesson. Where is the lesson? There it is. And so let me share that page with you. So that is exactly what we're looking at. And now let me just shrink this page a little bit. So we'll go back to normal sizes. And what you'll find is I want you guys to come back and look at this whole activity, and you'll find our story. And I want you to be the teacher. So I want you to fix it. So first thing we've got is activity 1 is highlight the errors. So there are mistakes in this. Now, the mistakes, the hint is looking at the verb tense. So remember what we said? Most times when we write a story, it's going to be in past tense. So this is where we have a whole lot of mistakes in here about the verbs. If you think this is a problem, you click on the word and you click on the word. If you think, oh, no, that one's okay, you just unclick it. When you've decided, you push submit and it will tell you how you went. So come back and test your verbs and make sure you're happy. And then I want you to test it again by fixing those sentences. So as you can see, there is 1, 2, 3, 4 mistakes in this story. So I want you to come back and fix the grammar. The other thing you can do is also come back and look at my grammar, my story structure, where I have paragraph 1, paragraph 2, and paragraph 3. So this is a nice structure for a story where I've got general information about what, where, when, why, who, and things like this. And then we go into more detail about the story. And then we should have some kind of conclusion. So have a look at the structure as well. It's a good structure to copy. So I'm going to move us on and have a look at the next page, which is the grammar page. So today's grammar, we are looking at adverbs. Now we're only going to look at 2 categories. We are looking at adverbs of frequency and adverbs of manner. So this is focusing on how we describe verbs. So again, if you want to know about the other categories, go and look at the grammar review and you'll be able to do more practice. There is also some information about adverbs of frequency and adverbs of manner there, but today we're looking at them together. So let's have a look at this. Okay, so rule number 1, we're looking at adverbs of frequency. So this is the category of how often. So when you're talking about frequency, we're asking how often you do something. So for example, he always drives to work. So this is something that happens every time. But when we're looking at adverbs of frequency, there are 2 categories. The first category is known. So we know exactly how much time happens, or there's the unknown amount of time. So it's a bit more unclear. We can know it's a lot, but we don't know how much exactly. So when I look at that word always, is always a known specific amount of time, or is it an unknown general amount of time? So is always known or unknown? And yes, Motion has got it. Always is an unknown amount because we don't know specifically. So I'll show you what I mean. When we're looking at known amounts, we usually use these. So if we're going for least often, it would be something like every year or yearly, every month, monthly, every week, weekly, every day, daily, or even more specific, we can go every hour, hourly. You can talk about every minute, but we don't do minutely. So the idea here is you can go from least often through to most often, and you can use all of these phrases. There's 2 different options. So all of these are really specific set amounts of time, so we know when it happens. So Gajavali's asking me each year. Is it correct? Yes. but it's a slightly different meaning when I use each or every. If I say every year on March 7th, it's my birthday, so that happens every year. But if I'm going for one specific year, each year, then it's my birthday. I can use that. That one's fine for that example. But if I say every year we get, I'm trying to think, weather, something kind of crazy with weather. Oh, I'm just thinking like monsoon seasons. So every year the monsoon season arrives during summer. So it's not each year. It's just the slightly more general idea of it happens every year, but it's not specifically each year, if that makes any sense. So the idea of each year I can use with my birthday because it's a specific thing that happens each year. But if it's every year and it's a little bit more general, I'll go with every. I still think it's worth checking and learning that one and doing a Google search and a definition on the difference between each versus every, and that way it'll help you a bit more. But both of those can fit in a lot of sentences. And yes, so for anyone who doesn't know about monsoon, monsoon seasons normally mean a lot of rain. So Isra's asking, how can we identify an adverb without ly? Well, I think you're going to just have to learn them. Thankfully, there aren't a lot of them. So this way you can learn them, and I would learn them in their groups. The first group is what we have here, where we've got a specific time. So we've got the each or every plus the time, every year, every month, every week, and so on. If you're doing it with an ly, you can add it like you see there, and it's nice and clear that it's an adverb. But there are also adverbs that don't have ly, and when you find them, you need to learn those because those are irregular. So let's have a look at the other category. When we have an unknown amount of time, this is the slightly more general, not as specific. It's more unclear about our time. However, we can still rate it from smallest to largest. So when I look at smallest, I would actually say never. Never is 0. But when I look at 100%, I would say always. However, I think always is not 100% in some situations. Like the sky is always blue. It's not always blue. Some days it looks a bit gray, some days it looks more white. It depends on the weather. So that idea of always, we're using probably at 99%. Sometimes it's a little bit flexible. So I'm just saying the biggest amount I can get for always. If I'm going for any of the ones in between, I usually put them in this order: never, rarely, sometimes, often, usually, always. Often and usually, I would argue, are very similar. There's a very small difference between them, and I would put often as smaller out of the two, but only by a little bit. So let's try and use all of these. How do we use the adverbs of frequency in a sentence? So first option, we can put them after the subject and before the main verb. So he often filled out the form. So it always has to be before the main verb. If you have more than one verb, it will still be before the main verb, not before the first verb. So main verb. Second use. So this is the category where we've got a helping verb. So be, have, or do. So this is often for things like present continuouses or present perfects or negatives and questions. So the adverb is still here right next to that main verb. So it goes after the helping verb and before the main verb. So this is the clue. We're always putting it before the main verb. Number 3, this is when you only have the verb to be, and the verb to be is the main verb. So this is not the auxiliary verb, the helping verb. This is the main verb. So this is things like facts. He is happy. He is tall. He is Australian. So if you're telling me how frequent when it happens, then we're looking at how often. He is often happy. He is usually happy. He is always happy. So this goes after that verb of to be. So that's the one that's a little bit unusual. Next group, we're looking at manner this time. So this manner is looking at how we do something or in what way we do something. So for example, he drives quickly. How does he drive? He drives quickly. So if we look at the adverb of manner, we actually start with an adjective and we change it into an adverb. So this is the nice group where most of them come from an adjective and become an adverb. And how do we make it into an adverb? I think, Isra, do you have any ideas of how we make an adjective into an adverb? Maybe anyone else? Does anyone else have any ideas? How do we make an adjective into an adverb? You got it. We add ly. So this is that group. So this is your traditional adding ly group. So the rule is add ly onto your adjective, and then it will make your adverb. Now, note with words like hopeful, there was one L in the adjective. On the adverb, we have two L's because we add it. We don't just add Y. So hopeful plus ly is two L's. But with quick and strong, there was no L, so it's only one L on that word. So make sure you look at that for spelling. Okay, if we have the word ending in Y though, so happy, we have to change the Y and make it into an I, and then you add your ly. So this is happy, easy, or lucky. In your chat box, how do I make lucky into luckily? How do you spell that? Almost, Darren. Good work, everyone else. You got it. So we're looking at easily, happily, luckily. So the Y from the adjective changes into an I, and then you add the ly. So that's it. You've got it. Okay, group number 3. These are those problem ones. These are the irregular ones. And I'm sorry, you just have to learn these. So some of the most common ones, some of the ones we use a lot: fast, good, and hard. How do we change these? What do we do to them? Well, we do nothing. They stay exactly the same. So no, fastly, that does not exist. And when you're looking at good and better, no, that is when we're looking at comparative adjectives. So be careful about this one. If we're saying fast, good, and hard, we're actually looking at the adjective becoming an adverb, and the adverb of good is actually well. The adverb of fast is fast. The adverb of hard is hard. So these don't change. So yes, you can say, like Israel said, very fast. You can add an extra adjective to make it bigger, really fast, very fast, completely. I can't think of one of the extreme ones, but those would work. But the idea here is they don't change. Now, the one to be careful of in this list is hard. Hard and hardly are both adverbs, but they have different meanings. So if I say hard, then I would say he worked hard. So that's describing how he worked. If I said he hardly worked, so it's a different order in this one, then I would say he didn't do much work. Hardly means very small, very few. So it's a very different meaning. Okay, and so let's look at how we use these in a sentence. So the most common way we use it is at the end, that last position. So he filled out the form carefully. He filled out the form quickly. He filled out the form happily. It's probably not the most normal, but yes, it could work. So number 2, we can put it in the same position as the other rule was, which is just before the main verb. He carefully filled out the form. He quickly filled out the form. And adverbs in this group have a third option, and this is here in the first position, and you must add the comma. Now, this one here, if you're putting it in the first position in English, this is because you are telling me this is the most important thing. So this is why it goes first. And when you're doing this, it's usually because you're trying to give me the background, maybe the situation. You're trying to give me the understanding, the method in this one. So we're focusing on the way first and then the action. So carefully, he filled out the form. But I think this one is not as popular in that this is actually quite a formal sentence. So if you're not sure about this, I wouldn't use this one. I'd probably use use number 1, which is the most common. So hopefully you've got it, and that's what we're looking at. So let's just push play and let this keep cycling through. I'm going to move us on to the activity. Now, when we're looking at the grammar, what we're needing to do is activity 1 is highlight the adverbs of frequency and adverbs of manner. So again, click on the word if you think it's that, unclick it if you think it's not. When you're finished, use the submit button. Now there is a trick. There are extra adverbs. I'm not going to show you them. There are extra adverbs in here, but not all of them are focusing on frequency or manner. So only look for those ones. So then we have the second activity where we want you to put those adverbs into the correct meaning. So let's do one of these together. In your chat box, I want you to type an adverb. So let's use the word suddenly. Is it frequency or manner? So type in your chat box frequency or manner. My word is suddenly. So remember, with frequency, I'm looking at how often. Manner, I'm looking at how it's done, the way it's done. So the word is suddenly. There's a bit of debate here. Suddenly is an adverb of manner. So it's not telling me how often you do it. It's telling me how you did it, the way you did it. And the way you did it was very quickly and maybe with that idea of surprise. So this is where this is a manner that we're focusing on. Now, the reason why this is important is there are 2 different grammar structures for these groups. So that's why you need to learn this one. Okay, let's do another one. My next word is, let's do frequently. Is it frequency or manner? Frequently. Yes, that was a much, much easier one. So, frequently. So frequent is the noun of frequency, and you can talk about frequently as my adverb. So how often do I do it? I do it frequently. Frequently is probably similar to often, that kind of idea. Okay, let's do another one. Let's do, seldom. 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 And seldom is again frequency. Seldom is another word that means rarely, not often. Okay, let's do one last one. This one is going to be kindly. Kindly. There you go. You've got that one. That's a nice, good, easy one. Everyone's gone for manner. So that's what we're looking at. So making sure you can identify how we use these. And if you're not sure, I would definitely look this up in a dictionary, because a dictionary will give you this answer as well. And yes, I agree. Being kind is good manners. So manners, I would make plural, Darren. Other than that, that's really good. And maybe that's a good way to learn it. Good manners, manner. There you go. So what I want to do is make sure everyone comes to the speaking page and tries this yourself. So we've got the rule written here again for you. Let me just make this a bit smaller. And the idea is the ly, the y becoming I, and then ly, or the irregular. So make sure you know your rules, and then I want you to try and listen and type the sentence. and then say it. So let's do the listening and type the sentence. So don't forget, we're looking for a capital letter to start the sentence and finish the sentence with a full stop. So I'll turn off my camera. I want you guys to type the sentence.
Usually, I was hardly ever late to class. Usually, I was hardly ever late to class. Usually, I was hardly ever late to class.
So it looks like everyone's got the words, and the big debate is about whether we need a comma. So is it usually, I, or usually, comma, I? So is it number 1 or number 2? Do I need a comma between usually and I? Yes, good work, everyone. We need the comma. Why do we need the comma? Because it's in that first position. So usually I was hardly ever late to class. And if you had that sentence, good work, you got it right. Now, if you didn't use the capital letter or that comma or the full stop, this will be marked as incorrect. So make sure you're looking at your punctuation for your sentence. If that's your mistake, then that's something that's worth practicing as well. Now, when you're done, you now use that sentence that's in green and record yourself. So you get your microphone and you say that sentence. Push record. Usually, I was hardly ever late to class. And stop. And let the computer analyze what you said. See how good you are in comparison to our computer. So hopefully you'll get 99% like what I've got. That means it's good. It's also gone green because it's great. If it's yellow, it's also good. Yellow and green basically tell me most people will understand you. It's the red ones that are our problem. So if you've got that, please try the troubleshooting tips. It could be your microphone. Hit retry and try and record it again. Or it could be something you need to work on. So let me just jump to the next page and show you what I mean. So in this situation, for this sentence, I'm studying maths and English. The maths word was not so good. It's come up as red. And the reason for it is these two sounds in the middle. And I would recommend taking that individual sound and going to Speaking Lab and studying it. So that's where Speaking Lab will help fix that pronunciation so that people can understand you. Now, the other thing I'd like to ask you all about is hardly ever. Hardly ever is the adverb, the second adverb in that group. Now, is that a frequency or manner adverb? Hardly ever. Again, a little bit of debate. So this one is, think about the word time. Ever goes with time. So hardly ever, we're talking about how often, which means we're looking at frequency. So hardly ever is probably a little bit like saying rarely. The difference is that hardly ever, I think, is a little bit more informal and more popular, but it's really the same idea, same meaning. I was rarely late to class. I was hardly ever late to class. No problem for both of those. So if you've got that, good work, you're doing really well. So what I want to do is I'm going to give you all the Facebook link because we've run out of time to keep going any further today. And so if you'd like to, sorry, Facebook's just given me some notice. No, I just want to look at the Facebook page. Thank you very much. So if you want to, Facebook page, thank you very much. Here we go. Here is the link coming now in the chat box. So if you want to come and join us in the Facebook group, please make sure you answer all the questions, which means you just move down the box and you'll find the last question is admin rules, group rules, and you have to say yes. There's a box that you have to tick. If you don't tick it, I can't let you into the group. And if it's not showing up as a box to tick, please make sure you try this on a computer, because sometimes it doesn't seem to appear on a phone. But then when you join us, you can come and join the Facebook group and write some sentences and add your ideas, maybe even talk to other students about doing practice together. So that is the end of today's lesson. So I've got a couple of questions I want to go back to review a few things for everyone. But for the moment, what I want to start with is what, if anyone else has any other questions, please type them in the chat box now. And if you have any other questions, if you want to know what to do next, it's now you need to go back to this lesson and try it for yourself. So this is the topic of education, and we're looking at lesson number 2, doing the course. So go and do the writing and the speaking activities. I would definitely recommend adding in the vocabulary activity, and then today's grammar is in the grammar tab, and so that was adverbs. So go and have a look at those. So the first question I can see. Okay, so I'm going back to a while ago, and it was from Gajavali. So let me just find your question from back at the beginning of class. Okay, so Gajavali asked, so she has said, during a meeting, my boss used a phrasal verb, turn off, to stop a person when he was trying to give an explanation. Is the usage of phrasal verb turn off correct here? No, that sounds a little bit unusual to me. And what is the difference between hang on versus turn off? Are they the same? No. So if I said turn off, that actually is more about like machines and things. So if I said turn off, you can get something like a remote and push the button to turn it on or turn it off. If you're using it about people, usually it's actually about my emotions, maybe like love. So when we talk about I am turned on or turned off. So normally this is to do with things like what are you turned on by? What makes you interested? Normally to do with love. And what are you turned off by? So I know that there are lots of people who have many turn offs, and it could be something like eating your fingernails could be a big turn off. So I am turned off by people eating their nails. So that would be that idea of turn off. But other than using it in this way to do with relationships and possibly sex, I don't think it's used about people. It's normally used about machines. When you talk about hang on, that one's talking about, it's like saying, please wait a moment. Hang on. So this is, I think, going back to surfing, where they were saying you had to hang on to the surfboard. So it's just wait a little bit. So that one is a very, very different meaning in those two examples. I hope that helps answer your question. Okay, let me move on to... Oh, yes, Janet, you got it. Hang on means to wait a while. Yep. So normally you would see this or hear this if you're on a telephone. Like if you call a doctor and you have to talk to the receptionist, they will say, oh, hang on. And maybe they will put you on hold, or they will look up something on a computer, and then they will go, oh, I found it. Okay, and give you the information. So hang on means to wait. Please wait. But it's very informal. Okay, I think that looks like it's pretty good. You guys have done really well. And that looks like all the questions from YouTube as well. So good work, everyone. So it looks like you're feeling pretty good with adverbs. I hope that's the case. But if you're not sure about them, what I would suggest is any of the ones that you make a mistake with, that is the one or ones that you should focus on. Those are the ones to start with and study them, practice them, use them in many, many ways. So that is the lesson for today. And that means you will see me back again on Wednesday, and we will have our third topic in the education. So third lesson. So on Wednesday, we'll start that one. And so I hope you have a good day and good time until then, but good luck and happy studying.